So only a few days ago, Israel has been bombing Syria or the sort of current Syrian government to protect the Druze population from them. Then there was a ceasefire between the forces in the region, and now clashes are continuing, and Israel is allowing the Syrian forces to go uh, within Suwayda, the Druze controlled city. Today we'll be talking a little bit more about Syria, but as with any war, and especially with this particular war, the fact is that we are not sure about many of the things, but we'll talk about maybe more of a general principles as well as some actions that we have confirmation that have been taken. Basically, anything Israel does, we usually know about it since they announce it or they communicate that. So that's something we can discuss and put it into context if it is proper, as well as we'll cover some of the sort of international reaction, or rather lack thereof, that we have seen. Welcome to the Daily Objective. Joining me today is Alejandro. And Alejandro, let me jump to you. I'm not sure if I ever had you to talk about Syria since, okay, so yeah, any of your thoughts on the sort of recent events, as well as sort of maybe in the context of, going back to before Christmas when the previous regime has fallen.
Well, my general comment over here is, uh, as you stated, like we don't know a lot. This is an operation of which we have very little information, and I think you will discuss about this even further. But one of the insights that I've been getting of this Syrian uh, of what's happened in Syria over the last 6, 7 months is how much it is that dictatorships are really at war with its people. And one of the things that you can see over here is that the civil wars that usually follow up whenever a dictatorship is taken down is usually because the same war that the government has against its people usually entails that certain people gather together to fight against the government. That doesn't tell you that these guerrillas or these opposition points are better than the dictatorship. It only means that there's a response against the quelling that usually these dictatorships have. And I think what the few things that we can assert from Syria is that you have some factions trying to gain power. Here, what you see is that the Jihadis faction is the one that has been getting the strongest pull over here, but certainly there are some other factions which maybe are trying to gather some space. We don't know how much or why, but certainly I think it's interesting to see how things develop n- from a nature of civil wars, nature of dictatorships point of view.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it has to be remembered that sort of the way Assad's regime fell wasn't through some kind of ideological change, wasn't through some kind of shift within the people. It was simply the army people were not getting paid. All of them at once pretty much deserted. It was no longer worth fighting for, and in a continuous erosion of Assad's sort of government or regime, it pretty much fell apart suddenly, and that vacuum had to have been filled by somebody. Now, as you sort of said, or sort of as something that should be understood is the fact that there is no sort of authority in the region right now. First of all, the Al Jilani, I always forget, they always have like 50 names, and there's always a different one. I'm gonna be referring to him as Al Jilani, the current the president of New Syria, or the of the current sort of supposed Syrian state. Um, So yeah, he doesn't really have control over anything. This is what you would expect, and this is what we are seeing in the South right now. The fact that he is coming in is sort of showing the fact that he simply wants to assert itself. Now, again, what does asserting itself mean? If we had one episode where we discussed the new Syrian constitution, and according to that, all customs of all religious groups and all ethnic groups should be are going to be respected. But the fact is that he is trying to get control of the South because of their of the specifically the Druze population, of their lack of sort of belief in the system, of them not really simply wanting to be a complete part of Syria, and he is trying to make use of that. So when that started happening, Israel reacted. Israel started protecting the Druze population, started sort of attacking or stopping the new Syrian army from going in. Uh, but now it seems like, basically, just to clarify, because I think we commented on it earlier and were not as precise, and I mean like a few days ago. Basically, now the understanding is that the clashes that started were between the local Bedouin tribes and the Druze population, reportedly started by the Bedouin, and then you had the sort of like escalating. One side does this, so the other side responds, so the other side responds, and that basically escalated into this conflict, and the Syrian regime wanted to make use of that situation and basically, while they are fighting, trying to take control. This Israel has stopped, but now the opposite is happening, that since Bedouins and Druze are continuing to fight, Israel wants to allow the Syrian government to go in. I think the agreement is they would go in for 48 hours, and it would be done in like a specific circumstances to basically just prevent escalation. Um, Alejandro, what do you make of this? I don't know what to even call this policy. Sort of, yeah, I don't know what to call this policy. What do you make of that?
Of Syria or of Israel?
Of Israel.
Well, I, I think I cannot make much of it, but from what we know, I think it sounds pertinent. Um, the I think that Israel should be as proactive as possible in regards to helping potential allies in the region. Uh, there, I've heard that there are some possibilities that they could help the Druzes to the Druze to create their own state. That potentially could be quite a development to have a close ally close to you and have a buffer zone. That can certainly be a very positive issue. Do I think that's where things are going? I have no clue to say. But in general, I would say that Israel has the complete right to move forward and to help whoever he needs help. Is that what's happening as well? So let's see. I don't know.
Yeah, I think Israel absolutely has sort of like interest in here, and I guess with that we can watch one video that we've seen around, and let's see if I can. Oh, it's this one.
ايوه لا حصاوي انا بس يوم بيطلع الكوز
So yeah, this goes for a bit longer, but basically it's a Druze celebrating sort of the arrival of the IDF or the presence of the IDF, and we've increasingly seen this sort of unity or sort of mutual understanding between the Druze and Israel. Of course, Israel itself does have a large Druze population. It actually currently has a problem with Druze population because specifically in the Golan Heights, many Druze have been crossing the border to Syria to basically protect. Now, that has been a big problem for the IDF since if somebody crosses and something happens to them, that of course isn't something you want to happen. And so now something that I want to bring up is this, and the reason why I showed this video is this like real lack of knowledge about we don't know what's going on. Yesterday I talked about this with Alex. Today Alex is also in the chat saying the government is trying to solve the issue between the Druze and Bedouins. The Damascus-Suwayda highway is a bandit highway. The Druze and Bedouin both control the drug smuggling. Yeah, and I believe this is how it started, at least from what I've seen. Again, we don't know, is that Bedouins have basically attacked some merchants. So yeah, basically you have this situation where we don't really know what's going on. Sort of all the news sources are filtered through Al Jazeera, since they are the only ones who can really sort of who have anybody on the side, and the only thing we can really rely on is some kind of open source. And I think this is something that has bothered even some people who watch us regularly. And I think maybe I'll try to give some answer, but Alejandro, what would your answer to be when it comes to sort of what can you trust, what can you rely on when it comes to reporting, especially when it comes to sort of asserting a situation like this and considering the proper steps?
Well, first of all, I'm not a massive consumer of war news, but certainly compared to usual news, you should be way much more cautious because you have, on the one hand, things that are moving extremely fast with reporters who sometimes have no idea of what's happening and also have risks of being injured. So they're further away from the action. And as well, there's a massive concealment from both parties. So any war reporting should be taken with a pinch of salt. Now, if you had the fact that what you were saying, that so a lot of what we're saying is from Al Jazeera, I would take it with a third pinch of salt of that pinch of salt because it's certainly, um, from what we know, very slanted and and certainly that murks things even further. So I would. That's. I mean, you've been warning ever since we started the show that this is news that we barely know, and I second you. I certainly agree that we should be discussing this as things move forward and be careful with what we assume.
Yeah, but what my answer would sort of be is I think generally this I think this more than ever sort of shows the importance of principles. Now, when it comes to sort of waging a war, once that sort of like starts happening, we don't really um, you don't really have time for elections. You don't really have time for sort of like civilian input, let's say. I think one of my favorite example of this is how pirate ships used to work. Basically, a captain was almost on every pirate ship, captain was picked diplomatically and could be taken out at any point. But usually when a fight starts, you don't do that. But the reason why I mentioned that is sort of now more than ever, we really need like a principled government, right? We see Israel sort of doing once this and once that. Now, if we had a proper government or if we had sort of a leadership with principles, then this sort of lack of information, at least for us, wouldn't be a problem, right? We can just trust the government to do the proper thing when it comes to waging a war. And what is the proper thing to do in Syria? I think Israel, for the most part, has been doing a proper job. First, before the fall of Assad, simply by combating the not even Assad directly, but sort of the regimes that are threat or could be potential threat, so like Hezbollah, and had ties to Syria, so like Hezbollah, Iran, combating that after the fall of Assad, simply destroying any sort of arms sites, anything that could potentially threaten the Israeli state, threaten the lives of Israeli citizens, and now basically well, one more thing they did is also crossing the Golan border with Syria and ensuring that no threat will happen, taking control of the mountain as well, and now basically doing whatever is necessary to really protect Israeli citizens. I don't think there is, we've commented on this, I don't think there is any obligation on the Israeli state to basically go in and save the Druze. I think the government of Israel has first and foremost a duty or sort of responsibility to its own citizens. But if sort of aligning themselves with Druze helps that, which I think it absolutely does, if you could have now the problem is that you cannot really create a Druze buffer state because basically you have Israel, then you have large population of sort of tribes and Bedouins and other Arabs, and only then after a little bit you have sort of the Druze controlled areas. But yeah, Alejandro, what do you make of sort of what should the right thing for Israel to do in this circumstance?
Um, well, first of all, I agree with you. Your question, I was taking it a bit more epistemically, but I think you were trying to catch the political, ethical point of view that we should take on this matter. Um, so, I mean, I I won't delve into the kind of strategy that Israel should take, but certainly I think they should uh, have the point of view of what is the best way in which we can act, in which we can protect our citizens. If we can help the Druzes or anyone who is an apparent ally of ours to continue and furthering their cause at essentially no expense of ours, I think that essentially a good position. If it's difficult or if it requires potentially threatening the lives of your people and you have nothing to win, I think they shouldn't help it. But again, and maybe this is something that uh, this is something that we have talked about repeatedly in this channel, but as well in the case of Syria, probably it's more important that the Israeli government doesn't give the moral sanction to the worst people, and to the better people does give it, but with some conditions, than even intervening militarily. And I think that's why Trump's acceptance or semi-sanctioning of the Syrian assumed leader, it was so bad for the cause, because you're giving him authority, you're giving him credibility, where, as far as we know, probably he doesn't deserve it. So what I would think it's most important here in this case is saying, hey, these are the better people. These better people are with us, maybe not in the battlefield, but certainly in soul, and we will give whatever it takes to help them, at least morally.
Yeah, I think that's right. And to sort of go to the last part I wanted to cover, there was a recent op-ed from Giulio Meotti on the Israel National News, or I think it's what is it called? Arutz Sheva, where one of the things that he mentioned that I think is kind of important is the lack of international condemnation or anything really. I haven't really heard from the UN, haven't heard, I think this is what he said. Where is the UN? Where are the pro-Palestinian protesters? Where are the so-called human rights activists? Where is Francesca Albanese? Where are the feminists? I think feminists specifically because also um, women have been getting slaughtered. But yeah, I mean, there is like a when Israel commits something, nobody waits for full story. Nobody waits for actually to know what's actually going on. They one video, one claim from Hamas, one sort of story from anybody, and it's immediate meeting at the UN, if not Security Council, condemnation from the Antonio Guterres calling for a ceasefire. Now, when it comes to this, I haven't been seeing that much. Which, yeah, I mean, Alejandro, what do you make of the difference between sort of reporting when it comes to something done by Israel and something done not even to Israel but to some other people in the region?
Well, there are many explanations to this. Basically, some of it could be related to essentially no coverage at all. I think it's related to if there's not a clear narrative which the international community can be surrounding itself to, then they won't cover it. They won't try to um, blame Israel because there's nothing very particular to talk about. And maybe it can serve as a lesson to the extent that the pro-Hamas, pro-Palestinian propaganda works as well as a whole apparatus. They already have the stories that impact the most. They already have the classic narrative, the things that impact the most in the things that impact the most in the West, the things that move people in the UN, the things that don't move people in the UN or in the US or in the West to release their propaganda. Here, I think they don't know how to move it, or they are not interested, at least so far.
Bonnie
What do
is
you think?
asking, do we know who are the forces attacking the Druze? Are they Syrian military or a different group, Bedouins? So from what we know, this, and also Alex in the chat says it's a conflict between the Bedouins and Druze. It's been going on for years. So yeah, this is not really like a new thing. This amount of violence or this escalating tension is what is new. Now, so this is what's going on right now. There was something I really wanted to bring up, and I should correct myself. Antonio Guterres did comment on this, so let me read what he said when it comes to Syria. I'm alarmed by the continued escalation of violence in Syria. This was 2 days ago, by the way. I'm alarmed by continued escalation of violence in Syria and unequivocally condemn all violence against civilians. I condemn Israel's escalatory airstrikes and reports of the IDF's redeployment of forces in the Golan. I call for an immediate cessation of all violations of Syria's sovereignty and territorial integrity. So who is violating the Syria sovereignty and territorial integrity, Mr. Guterres? The Druze population? Because they are the ones who are calling for a certain amount of autonomy. Is he saying that, let all the Syrian forces in? So yeah, this is exactly we're saying. It's always Israel who's at fault. It's always the victims who are blamed. Even in this situation, the Druze populations are not Israelis. They are not Jewish people. Yet they, because of their relation to Israel, because of their sort of perceived alliance, or at least not direct hatred of the Israeli state, they are bumped in together or sort of bunched up together with the Jews and are condemned because of that. Uh, Alejandro, any thoughts on this or any other of your thoughts, and where can people find you?
Well, the thoughts is I think it's interesting to follow this. Again, dictatorships do not imply by any means that there is peace, that people that the country as such is in reality at a state of relative peace, but actually at a state of relative war, and sometimes it's quelled or semi trucified, or I don't know how to call it, but certainly whenever the dictatorship falls, you have the groups that were antagonistic to government rising up, and that's what we are seeing now. And I think it's interesting to see what happens going forward. Um, I think the best way that people can find my work is here in ARC UK. There's a playlist on the essays or on the essays on Ayn Rand that James Valiant and I did a couple of years ago. If you are interested in her essays, you can read them, chew them by hearing these videos, and I think they can be an interesting source for you.
And before we part our ways, let me remind people about the Irreplaceable Spark Conference. It's a conference we're planning later this year, October 25th and 26th. But I shouldn't tell you about this. Let's hear from somebody who's actually going to be speaking there to tell you about this.
I'm Jim Brown. I'm a longtime supporter of Ayn Rand Center UK, which I think is doing an excellent job of bringing practical objectivism to many, many people. Razi's going to do this conference in October, the Irreplaceable Spark Conference. And I'm really intrigued by this because many successful people have used Ayn Rand's ideas as sort of a secret weapon to propel them through life. This conference should really highlight how this works. Another reason, frankly, is to get practical ideas. I think you're going to find all of the speakers have found very practical use for objectivist ideas. And you might find that in seeing what they did, you might find ideas for you. And I'm talking about both your personal and your professional life. You need to keep them in sync. Objectivism can help you do that in a very practical way. So come to this conference and I think you'll get a better idea of how that happens.
So that's objectivism.co.uk. Visit the website to find out more about that. We have the reality show coming up. We'll be talking about Biden's war on Israeli democracy. There was a new, I don't know what you would call it, but there was a new, let's just say, report. I think it was House Committee who have looked into where US aid was going during the Biden's administration. So make sure to join us for that in just a few minutes or so. Thank you, Alejandro, for joining me today. Thank you, everybody, for watching, and bye-bye.